It's no secret for any Jew living anywhere on planet Earth that since October 7th, anti-Semitism has unfortunately raised its ugly head in all corners of the world. I saw a report in the Israeli government that 96% of European Jews have claimed that since October 7th have encountered an anti-Semitic incident. 96% of Jews. According to the ADL in America, in the United States, in the year 2024, 9,354 anti-Semitic incidents in a year, which means 25 every single day. On average, there's 24 hours in a day. On average, at least one anti-Semitic attack every hour of every day of the year 2024. In Australia, according to the Australian Bureau over there, anti-Semitism has gone up 316%. Like just an explosion, an absolute explosion of anti-Semitism all over the world, wherever it is, and it's no secret. You go online, you walk in the streets. If you're not in Israel, it's quite crazy. It's mamish crazy. And the overriding question I want to ask you today is, what do we do about this? How did the Jewish nation survive anti-Semitism for such a long time? Thousands of years, right? This is not our first rodeo with anti-Semitism. We've been here before, and we will be here again until Mashiach comes, right? But the question I want to ask you is, what could we do? What could individuals do, right? Sometimes you need to create a state of Israel. You have an army, but what as an individual? You at home, every single person. What could you do today to help fight and survive anti-Semitism? That's the main question, the overriding question that I would like to ask. And the answer is going to be hidden, tucked away in our Parsha. Our Parsha, there's a few main events that happen in our Parsha. One of the events, which is like kind of glossed over. Most people don't discuss it. When you hear different types of shiurim, it's usually glossed over. But that's where it's hidden, the story, or really the secret, how to combat anti-Semitism, at least on an individual level, right? So you have in our Parsha, you have in the beginning, Yaakov and Esav are born. Yaakov buys the Bechorah. He buys the first, how do you say Bechorah? The birthright. Thank you. The birthright from Esav. And then towards the end of the parsha is that when it's time to get the brachot, when it's time to get the blessings, so Yaakov sneaks his way in and he gets the blessings, and then he has to run away because his brother Esav wants to kill him. There's one thing in between there that's kind of like hidden. We kind of gloss over it, and that is basically what we know about Yitzchak's adult life. Like what happens to him, and it's the story of Yitzchak moving to Gerar, digging wells. He has like a real estate dispute with the people over there. They're my wells, they're your wells. He digs more, and they fight again, and then they continue. But in that parsha, that's usually overseen, is going to be the secret of how to combat anti-Semitism, and that's going to be the crux of this shiur. What do we do in the face of so much hate and so much anger and animosity towards the Jewish nation? Specifically, what to us, every single person, what do you as an individual, what could you do to fight anti-Semitism? So let's jump into the parsha. We're going to see something, mashu, hafli v'fela, really incredible. We'll ask two questions on two main questions, and then we'll get into the details of the parsha, and hopefully we'll circle back and we'll be able to answer what exactly we can do to combat anti-Semitism, at least on an individual level. So let's begin. You ready? Let's start with the first question. The first question I'd like to ask you is, what exactly is so unique about Yitzchak that made him one of the patriarchs? You read the psukim, right? You have Avram Avinu. He's ish chesed. He's doing achnasas orchem. He goes out to fight with wars. He gets thrown into kivshan esh. He's amazing, right? I understand. Makes the patriarch. You have Yaakov, already starting from the end of this week's parsha. He needs to get the Bechorah. He goes. He has a lot of trials and tribulations in his life, and he's able to overcome it. His kids, his wives, like he gets tricked, but he has that determination to always to continue. Then you have like Yitzchak. He's like in the middle. We don't really know anything about him so much. There's not a lot of real estate, meaning the only parsha that really discusses Yitzchak is this week's parsha. Up until now, it's all Avram. From the end of this week's parsha till the end of Sefer Bereshis, it's going to be only Yaakov. Yitzchak takes very small amount of space in the Torah, and we don't know so much. To the contrary, what we see about him is that he's, if we can say, unspectacular in any way, right? He really doesn't do anything unique. To the contrary, all he does is he copies, right? And you see this already from his birth, right? It says when Yaakov, when Avram Avinu, when Yitzchak is born, it says Ve'ele Toldot Yitzchak ben Avram. In this week's parsha, says Rashi, why does it say Ele Toldot Yitzchak ben Avram? Avram olidet Yitzchak. Why does it repeat it? So says Rashi, they looked exactly alike. you would walk in the street, be like, is that Avram? Is that Yitzchak? Which one is that? The father? Is that the son? Right? Who exactly is who is that? Yeah. So that's so number one, you see that they actually look alike. Number two, both Yitzchak and Avram Avinu, they have to leave their house. Right? They both left their house for what reason? Because there was a famine. Right? There was famine. They have to go. When they get down to the place where there's a little bit more food, both of them need to say, this woman that's with me, she's not my wife. What is she? She's my sister. Right? That's what they both need to say. Right? And then both Avram and Yitzchak have really difficult time conceiving. Right? Avram Avinu is only 100 years old when he has Yitzchak. In the beginning of this week's Parsha, you have Yitzchak who doesn't have any kids, and they're waiting and they're davening. Yitzchak goes ahead and he davens. Each one of them, Avram has two main children. One's a tzaddik, Yitzchak. One's a rasha, Yishmael. Yitzchak has two kids, right? One's a tzaddik, Yaakov. One's a rasha, Esav. Yeah. Now, what's his main highlight? Where does he shine in this week's Parsha? Where you see Yitzchak as an adult, what does he do? He's redigging the wells that Avram Avinu dug, and what does he do? He calls them the same names that Avram Avinu called the wells. That's what it says in this week's Parsha. What did Yitzchak do? What's his claim to fame? Avram Avinu dug wells. They were filled up by the Plishtim, and then Yitzchak comes and he digs them again, and he calls them the same names that his father called them. So in other words, all we see about Yitzchak, what's spectacular about him? Nothing. Almost really nothing. He seems to just be in the keyboard, when you do Control-C, Control-V, copy-paste. That's basically what you did here. You copy-pasted Avram Avinu, and in an unspectacular way, but yeah, he's Yitzchak Avinu, he's one of the patriarchs. So the one question I want to ask you is, what is so unique about Yitzchak that makes him one of the three patriarchs? And we're going to see it's what he brings to the table is as important as the other two. Okay? That's question number one. Question number two is that ironically, even though Yitzchak seems to be like the copy-paste of Avram Avinu, and he seems to have nothing super spectacular about him, what's fascinating about Yitzchak is that the Midrashim all connect Yitzchak to the building of the Beis HaMikdash. And I'll give you 4 proofs to this. 4 proofs that Yitzchak is connected to the Beit HaMikdash. First of all, you have in this week's Parsha, after Yitzchak fights with the Plishtim about the different wells, the Torah tells us that he digs 3 other wells. One he calls Esek, the other one Sitna, and the last one Rechovot. Right? Those are the 3 different ones. And the Ramban already explains, he says that each one corresponds to a different Beis HaMikdash. Esek refers to the first Beis HaMikdash where there was fighting. Sitna was there were hatred, that refers to the second Beis HaMikdash. And Rechovot, which means everything's spacious and everything's okay and everything's wonderful, that refers to the third Beis HaMikdash, right? So the wells that Yitzchak is digging corresponds to the 3 different Batei Mikdashot. That's proof number 1, that Yitzchak is connected to the Beit HaMikdash. Proof number 2, that Yitzchak is connected to the Beis HaMikdash, and specifically we'll see also the Mishkan, is that the Jewish nation, when we left Mitzrayim, and that was on Pesach, okay? We got the Torah when? Shavuos time, right? 49 days later we got the Torah. Meaning that's when there was Mamad Har Sinai. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Har Sinai 40 days and 40 nights. He comes back down on the 17th of Tammuz. What does he see on the 17th of Tammuz? He sees us sinning with the Chet Egel. So he takes the 2 luchot and he breaks them. He then goes to beseech Hashem for forgiveness. Hashem tells him on Rosh Chodesh Elul, come back up and receive the second Torah. So he's up in Rosh Chodesh Elul, from Rosh Chodesh Elul until 40 days, until Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, Hashem says, V'yomer Hashem, Salachti kidvarecha, I fully forgive the Chet Egel. He comes down with a second set of luchos, and right afterwards, around Sukkot time, is when we begin to build the Mishkan. That's when we build the Mishkan. When was the Mishkan finished building? Right, you have Betzalel, we collected all the gold, we had to make all the different kelim that are in the Mishkan. When was it finished? On Kislev, they say on Hanukkah. Okay, in Hanukkah time it was actually finished. Okay, that's when it was finished. But, says the Medrash, it wasn't put up until when? Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Why? It's already done on Hanukkah, right? We finished Kislev time. We had 2 months. We built the whole Mishkan. Beautiful, right? Why didn't we put it up until Rosh Chodesh Nisan? The reason why we didn't put it up until Rosh Chodesh Nisan, says the Medrash, because that's the month where Yitzchak was born. Okay? So meaning, we waited a whole bunch of months just to erect the Mishkan. Why? Because we want to do it on the month that Yitzchak was born. So again, here's another connection between the Beis HaMikdash or the Mishkan and Yitzchak. Proof number 3 is, where was Akedas Yitzchak, which is called Akedas Yitzchak, where was that? On Har HaMoriah. What's in Har HaMoriah? The Beis HaMikdash, right? That's the third proof. Proof number 4 is, it says, Al Shlosha Dvarim Ha'olam omed. There's three things that the world stands on. Torah, avodah, and gemilut chasadim. Torah means Torah learning. Avodah means the avodah of the Beis Hamikdash, which corresponds to davening. And gemilut chasadim is kindness. So Torah represents Yaakov. It says about Yaakov, v'Yaakov ishtam yoshev olim. You have chesed is corresponding to who? To Avram Avinu. He's the ish chesed. And then in the middle is you have avodah, which is tefillah. Who's that corresponding to? Yitzchak. It says about Yitzchak, v'Yitzchak ba lasuach basadeh. You find Yitzchak is davening. Where is the place that everyone davens? Where's the house of tefillah? What do we say? Ki beiti bet tefillah yikareh lechol hamim. My house is going to be a house of prayer for all nations. Where is that? The Beis Hamikdash. Proof number 4 that Yitzchak is correlated and connected to the Beis Hamikdash. So the second question I want to ask you is, what is the deeper meaning over here between Yitzchak and his connection to the Beit Hamikdash? Good. We have two very simple, straightforward, fascinating questions. Question number 1 is, what makes Yitzchak so unique? Why is he the Avos? Why is he one of the three? He's one of the 3 patriarchs. What did he make? He seems to be a copy-paste of Avram at best. Right? That's what it seems. That's number 1. Question number 1. Question number 2 is that we find that Yitzchak has the most connection to the Beis Hamikdash. We gave 4 different proofs of how Yitzchak is connected to the Beis Hamikdash. And the second question I'd like to ask you is, what is this deep connection between Yitzchak and the Beit Hamikdash? Good? Amazing. Here we go. You ready? Mamash incredible. And when we answer, what we're going to do, we're going to answer these 2 questions. And when we answer these 2 questions, it's going to bring us back to our opening question. Our initial opening question is, what could each and every single one of us do to combat anti-Semitism? We're going to have to focus, in order to really get a better understanding of who Yitzchak is, we're going to have to focus on that one parsha that everyone seems to kind of skim over, because it's not so much action. It doesn't seem so exciting. It's Yitzchak fighting with a plishtim about a bunch of wells, about the real estate. But hidden in that parsha, in that little thing, which we're going to learn, and we're going to read it together, part of it, we're going to see how everything is answered from that parsha. And I want to introduce it by quoting the Ramban, the Kli Yakar, and a few other commentaries who say that the story of Yitzchak arguing one-on-one, right, with all the plishtim about the wells and going back and forth, is the story of Jewish history. It's the foreshadowing of all Jewish history in exile. And if you learn this parsha well, you'll understand what happens to the Jew in exile, and you'll also understand how to combat what's happening to the Jew in exile. And I want to read you the language of the Kli Yakar, because the language, it's gold. He says like this: Al ken archiv bo adibur. Says the Kli Yakar, says, even though, right, this looks like it's like stuck here in the middle. He's arguing about real estate. Archiv bo, I'm going to go to great lengths to explain it. Why? Bepratei ha'inyanim. In great detail, I'm going to explain everything. Shekulam matimim ima shekara lanu. Says, because hidden in here is going to reveal to us what happened to us in the past. Uma shiyeh b'achrei yamim, and also what's going to happen at the end of days when Mashiach finally comes. So hidden in this parsha that we're about to learn is the story of all of Jewish history. So we're going to learn this parsha inside, this part that's usually glossed over, and we're going to see how the story of Jewish history literally comes out from the psukim over here. So let's begin. You have Yitzchak. Okay, Yitzchak is already, he's a grown adult man. And the Torah tells us like this: there's a famine. So he needs to leave his land. He leaves his land. That's where we find Vayeshev Yitzchak beGerar. Yitzchak leaves his homeland. He goes to a place called Gerar, meaning he's in Galut. He's a Ger. Gerar is Milashon. Ger. Ger means he's a visitor. This is not his homeland. So this represents the Jewish nation leaving the land of Israel, and we're now spread apart all among nations of the world. What do we try to do wherever we go? We try just to leave us alone. Let me do my Seder. Let me do my Hanukkah. Let me do my Purim. Let me do my holidays. Let me just live life. Let me give over the Mesorah, the values that I've gotten in my house. Let me just live in quiet. But what usually happens when the Jews moves into different countries, we try to lay low. And that's why, but right away, right away they start asking, digging into your personal, who's your wife? Is she your wife? And what does he have to say? He has to lie, because he's scared about what they're going to do to his wife. He says, no, it's not my wife, it's my sister. Right? And then what ends up happening, they do some research, right? Avimelech sees that it's not really his sister. Really, what is it? It's his wife. So he accuses him, why did you lie to me? So what is Yitzchak saying? What do you mean, why did I lie to me? Because I walk in, I'm trying to mind my own business. Right away, you're asking, who's this woman? Right? We need to we're always under attack for some reason. So of course I had to lie. And what's their response? No, we never would have done that. Why would you think such a thing? Right? We never, right? Avimelech responds. He says, right? V'ka Avimelech Yitzchak. He says, she's your wife. Why did you tell me why did you tell me she's your sister? Right? So Yitzchak says, Ki amarti pen amut elai. You're going to kill me for it. You're going to persecute me for it. V'yamar Avimelech, ma zot asita lanu? What have you done? Playing the innocent card. Fine. When we go into exile, we always feel threatened. We always feel like for some reason they're out to get us. But we continue. We plow anyways. Okay, again, this is the story of all of Jewish history. Then what happens? Vayizra Yitzchak ba'aretz ahu, vayimtza b'shana ahi, mea she'arim, vayivarcheu Hashem. Yitzchak, we're in a new land. He gets to work. Every Jew, what does he do? Wherever he is in the world, he gets to work. Let me see what I can do, what I can produce. And he does it. And what happens? Vayivarcheu Hashem. He becomes extremely successful. Vayigdal ha'ish, Yitzchak grows. Vayelech haloch v'gadel. He gets even greater and greater. Ad ki gadal me'od. Until what? He becomes super big. Right? This is the story of Jewish people. Jewish history, wherever we go, every country we go to, we become huge. Vayilo mikne tzon umikne bakar v'avodah rabah. He has a lot of wealth, a lot of affluence, and he grows in the country that he's in. Right? There are 990 Nobel Prize winners in the world. Out of the 990 Nobel Prize winners in the world, how many of them are Jewish? 220. Okay, that's a staggering 22%. 22% of all Nobel Prize winners in the world are Jewish, when we comprise of 0.2% of the world's population. So if one Jew would have won the Nobel Prize, just one, it would have been already above average, right? That would have been already above average. But there's 22% who have of all the Nobel Prize winners are actually Jewish. So wherever we go, we are extremely successful and we do very well. Baruch Hashem. So now the nations of the world have two options, right? They look at us and they can say, whoa, how does this make sense? How is it that this persecuted nation, right, goes from place to place and wherever they touch becomes gold, right? Whatever they do, they're successful. How could that be? So there's two options. Either there's a God who created the world, and he chose the Jewish nation, or he's blessing the Jewish nation. But if that's your conclusion, so then now you have a lot of other moral responsibilities, okay? So this is the chosen nation. So what is the chosen nation meant to do? They're meant to teach us morality. They're meant to promote all the ethics of the Bible and all the mitzvos, kabed et avicha, respect your parents, and don't harass your animals even, right? All the different halachas that we have. So, but if you go that route, it's not so much fun, because you need to acknowledge that there's a God. And you need to acknowledge that a God created a nation, and the goal of this nation is to spread morality. So what's the other option? There's no God. So why are they so successful? Why is it that wherever a Jew goes, whatever he touches becomes gold? Why is it? They got lucky. Right? Now, if they get lucky, why is he lucky and not me? I also want to be lucky. So what happens when you see someone who's doing much better than you, and you can't explain it? What naturally happens? You get jealous. What does the next pasuk says? Vayikanu bo, right? They got, it says, Vayikanu oto aplishtim, right? The Plishtim get jealous of him, right? But he doesn't make a difference. He continues working, and it says, V'chol ha'be'erot asher chafru avdei aviv bimei Avram satmu pishlisim. So they get upset at him, and what do? They close up the wells, right? They close up the wells, all the wells that he dug. They close them up. Now, why would you do that? You're shooting yourself in the neck, right? Meaning there's a famine. Why did Yitzchak come down here in the first place? Because there's nothing to drink, right? Doesn't make a difference. We don't care. We don't want the Jew to succeed, even if it's going to come at our expense. We'll take the wells that he dug that actually helped us, that were good for us, but we're gonna close them. And even that's not enough, right? Even that's not enough. So what does Yitzchak do? It says that Avimelech tells Yitzchak, Lech mi'imanu. This is the next step of Jewish history. The next step of Jewish history, where we go to a place, we succeed, we help out, and then the nation of each country, they need to make a decision. Is this a God-given thing, or is it just by chance? And a lot of times, unfortunately, they choose it just by chance. And if it's just by chance, you naturally get jealous. You try to hit the Jewish nation at the knees as much as you could, to the point where it's too much. What do? You throw them out. Literally, throw them out of the country that you lived. I went to ChatGPT beforehand, and I said, could you give me a list of all the times that the Jewish people were expelled from a country that they were living in? And it came out with over 30 times that in the past 1,500 years around, a little bit more, give or take, that the Jewish nation, Jews, were expelled from their land. Obviously, there was Churban Bais, right, when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed around the year 70, I think, like that area. And then you have much later on, in the year 1000, from the Rhineland. In 1182, from France. 1290, there was from England. There were no Jews left in England. There was they threw the Jews out. 1322 from France. 1360 from Hungary. Spain, right? The Spanish Inquisition. What was that? 1492. 1496 from Portugal. 1541 from Naples and all the Vatican and the Papal states. 1744 from Prague. 1880 from the Russian Empire. Nazi Germany. And then since the state of Israel, all of the Arab countries basically threw us out. So this is the next step of Jewish history. The Jews are successful. We can't stop them. What do? You throw them out. So what does Yitzchak say? He says, okay, you threw me out. Yitzchak goes, I'll go to the next place. Okay, I go to the next place. What does he do? And he digs a well, right? He digs a well. And what do they say then? That's our well. What? You died, it's ours. So even when we're out, we did it. So he says, fine, take it. I'll go to, and he calls that was the first well that he calls Esek. And then he goes to another well. He goes to another place, he digs, and he finds another one. He says, oh no, that's also ours. What happens? He calls it Sitna, right? Meaning they're out to get me. They just hate me. Well, it doesn't make a difference where I go. They're going to chase after me. They're going to run after me, and they're going to be able to. And that's what they do. They go from place to place, and they follow us until finally he digs the third one. Okay, and then the third one they don't fight about, and therefore he calls it. He says, "V'yomar ki ata yechiv Hashem lanu uparinu ba'aretz." He calls it Rechovat. Why? Because now there's space. Now Hashem is the one who gave me space, who gave me the ability to open up, to be able to expand, to be able to live without any injustice. So what the Mefarshim explain over here, and what we've been showing, is that this story, which seems to be just like a battle of real estate, when you read it very superficially, it's the story of Jewish history throughout all of exile. So if this is the story of Jewish history throughout all of exile, hidden in here is also going to be the story of Jewish history throughout all of exile, of how we actually make it out, how we actually survive all the persecution, how we survive the pogroms and the Inquisitions and the chasing after us. What in this parsha is going to be the secret of how Am Yisrael made it thus far, and that's what we're going to answer now, and that's going to answer how we could ultimately battle anti-Semitism. So there's two things over here that hidden in the psukim reveal to us how we were able to combat anti-Semitism throughout all of eternity, and how we're still here in Eretz Yisrael, sitting, learning Torah against all odds, against all bets. If you have this polygraph, right? What's that betting website where you bet all these? You can bet it against modern day things, right? So if someone would put a bet in the year 70, will the Jewish people be back in Israel in the year 2025 in an air-conditioned room in Yerushalayim, learning Torah? It would be zero. It would be probably, if there was sub-zero, it would be like in the sub, like in the bottom, right? But we're here. How did we do it? It's in the Parsha. And it's going to answer our two questions. Two things right away. When Veikenu bo Echav, right? They Veikenu bo Narachav, Veikenu bo Aplishtim, they get jealous and they want to fight him. They want him. What does Yitzchak do? What's he famous for? Exactly this. He does exactly what his father did. He's copy paste of his father, meaning he doesn't change an iota of what he learned from his father. So number one is, how do you combat, how does Yitzchak combat the anti-Semitism that's around him? One word, Misorah. Misorah means tradition. Not to change an iota from the Torah, not to add, not to minus, not to take away. He digs the same wells that his father dug, and he calls them the same names as his father called. There was no Torah back then, right? So what's he doing? He says, I'm doing exactly what my parents do. I'm not going to give up Hanukkah, and I'm not going to give up Purim, and I'm not going to give up Sukkot, or Pesach, or Shavuos, or Shabbos, or kosher, or any one of the mitzvahs. I'm going to do exactly what my father did. Keeping the Misorah throughout all of history is the secret of how Am Yisrael kept on going, right? Again, against all odds. We had no nation, we had no country, we were spread out. What was it that kept us together? The fact that we clung on to our Misorah. And included in that, or you can say part two, is the emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the faith in Hashem, that we will get out of this tsar. Whatever it is, we're going to be strong and we're going to have faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's what's going to get us out of the tsar. And that's what you have over here, where it says, Vayivachel Hashem. We realize that all the bracha comes from where? Comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he calls the last one Rechovet. Why? Ki Irchiv Hashem Lanu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who gave us whatever it is that we have. So through Mesorah, through keeping the tradition, not changing an iota of the Torah, and this unwavering faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is the secret to be able to overcome anti-Semitism as individuals. Yes, what could you as an individual do? That's what we could do. And that's why we ask, what's so unique about Yitzchak? What's so great about it? He's Control-C, Control-V of Avram Avinu. He's copy-paste of Avram Avinu. That's what he offered to the table. You have Avram Avinu, Ish Chesed, trailblazer, innovator. You have Yaakov, who's the resilient one. He's able to continue. Any predicament you put him in, he's able to overcome. What does Yitzchak bring to the table? In order to be able to innovate, to become a Yaakov, in order to become the innovator who's always innovating and be able to overcome any trials and tribulation, what do you need first? Ogen. And Ogen is an anchor, the anchor of the Mesorah. The anchor of the Mesorah of being there and connecting to your tradition, to all the Torah and all the mitzvahs, and together with that is the emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So just as important as it is to find God, and just as important as it is, which is Avram, just as important it is to be able to overcome every trials and tribulation, you're only going to be able to do that if in the middle you're anchored down with your faith and you're anchored down with your Mesorah, and you're not changing an iota of the Torah in any direction. And what's fascinating is that in our generation now, okay, we see as much as anti-Semitism is rising, naturally, what's also happening? There's an incredible reawakening in the Jewish nation of our Mesorah, our tradition, and also emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It almost goes like hand in hand. When anti-Semitism raises its head, right, like you have with Yitzchak, what do we answer in response? No one told them to do this. But this is what's happening to the Jewish nation. We're getting stronger with our traditions, number one. We're connecting more to the Torah, to the mitzvahs, and at the same time, our faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu is growing. There, if you are in Israel and you look at the Israeli news channels, I think just about each one has done in the past month, 2 months, 3 months, an expose. I don't know if it's called an expose, but like a mini documentary about the awakening of the youth in Israel and how they're connecting more to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? And they say it trickled down to the pop songs, to like the songs that were usually about boyfriend, girlfriend, are now all about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? What's one of the famous songs? Ki Hashem yitbarach, tamid ohev oti, vetamid yeh li rak tov, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves me. Everyone feels that. You can be with a kippah on your head, not with a kippah on your head. Everyone feels HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves me, right? And it's going to be better. Why is it going to be better? Why better? Because you have emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you have emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a real way. You go, what was the number one from October 7th till today? What was the number one requested item in the army? It wasn't an extra helmet or a vest. What was it? Tzitzis. Literally, you walk in, you have people without a kippah, but what do they have? Tzitzis out, right? One's a deoraisa, maybe, one's a derabanan. But they're walking around with tzitzis. This is my uniform, right? I am part of Am Yisrael team. This is connecting to the tradition. And it became even greater through all the hostages. When all the hostages came back, some of them from kibbutzim, some of them totally unaffiliated. We mentioned this in the past, we'll mention it again. They come back on fire with faith. Eli Sharabi, he says there's nothing greater than the power of emunah. He says emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu can get you through any trial and tribulation, which is exactly what we're saying. Emunah in Hashem is what's going to be able, what could we do to fight anti-Semitism as individuals? More emunah. Be mechazik your emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have Ram Braslavsky. I think he said that he related. He said that they told him, we'll give you more bread if you convert to Islam. And he says, what are you talking about? He says, I was born a Jew, and I'm going to die a Jew, and even if I can't have food, it doesn't make a difference. I'm gonna continue. Bar Cooperstein, who just got released now. You can see this all on YouTube. You have like an interview of him where he says as follows. He says that at some point during the captivity, one of the Hamas terrorists called his mom. Right, called his mom, and she said, and the Hamas terrorist said, you're not doing enough. You're not doing it. You need to make more noise for your son. You need to go to The Hague. You need to go to the protest. Why aren't you out in the streets, protesting? They were trying to use like their psychological warfare against him. And what did she say? She said as follows, and I'm going to translate it to Hebrew. She said, my son is not in your hands. He's in the hands of Hashem. And then she pauses and says, and you too are in the hands of Hashem. And then there's silence from the Hamas terrorist, Yimach Shemo. And after a few seconds, he says, Kol hakavod giveret, and he hangs up the phone. This is what you can hear Bar Cooperstein. You can hear him say this story, and he talks about what got us through everything. The emunah and Hashem, right? You hear about the hostages. He says, what did we do in the tunnels on Friday? Hir'adnu et ha-minorot. We shook the caves with the emunah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have Maxim Harkin. He says when it was coming up to Yom Kippur, he says we knew it was Yom Kippur. He said we started saying slichos. Not all of us know the nusach. Everyone had something else that they remembered, and that's how we created the tefillah. Right? We got through our emunah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We were able to get through. You have Eviatan. He spoke about it. He said that one of the ways that he got through, he says he wrote to himself, Gam ze yavo. This too, what Shlomo HaMelech said. This also is going to pass. Oad ben Ami, a kibbutznik, mamish, nothing, right? The first thing when he came back, he says, I want to make kiddush. I want to put tefillin on. And then there's a video of him where literally he has tefillin on his head. He's wearing tefillin, and he says the one thing that all of Am Yisrael can unify us. Can unify. He says, what's one thing we can all get together? In order to have unity, there needs to be at least one thing that everyone agrees to. He says, Ma shemached otanu ze emunah. What unifies all of Am Yisrael is the faith and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's it's wild. But this is how you combat anti-Semitism. When Omer Shem Tov, I had the schos of speaking with him and interviewing him. So one of the things he said, he took out from his pocket, he said, when I was in captivity, one of the Hamas terrorists brought to me what soldiers left behind, and it was Tehillim Chaf. It was the Tehillim of Chaf. He says, and every single day, I would say this capital Tehillim. Every single day, right? Yancha Hashem b'yom tzara. And what does it say at the end? Ele b'rechev ve'ele b'susim. And there are those who go out to battle with war and tanks. V'anachu, what are we going to do? B'shem Hashem naskir. We're going to mention, and when he came back, what did he find out? That his mother, every single morning, when she woke up in the morning, she would go into his room, she would sit on his bed, and what parak of Tehillim would she say? This exact parak of Tehillim. Out of all the 150 parakim of Tehillim, she chose this one. So every single day, they were each saying the same exact parak of Tehillim, one under a tunnel in Gaza, who knows how many feet under the ground, and one here in Eretz Yisrael. And both of them tapped in to this endless resource that has kept the Jewish people alive, and that is emunah in Hashem, faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and unhindering Mesorah, not changing anything from the Mesorah. And you see the kids, how they're starting to keep Shabbos, and they're starting to, some are religious, some are not. They interview these kids at the Kotel. Ani lo dati, aval ani shomer Shabbat. Ani lo dati, aval ani... These people are on fire with their emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is the answer to anti-Semitism. So let's circle back on everything we discussed and make sure that we have everything clear. We asked, what is so unique about Yitzchak? Why was he the one why did he make, he seems like a copy and paste. Why did he become one of the three patriarchs? Yeah, that's what he offered. What he brought to the table is how a Jew survives when there's anti-Semitism all over the world. The way a Jew survives when there's anti-Semitism all over the world is through emunah and faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we also asked, why is Yitzchak the most connected to the Beis HaMikdash? Why is he the one, right? Remember, that was the second question. He's over and we find him. 4 proofs we gave. How Yitzchak, out of all the patriarchs, he's the one that's most connected to the Beis HaMikdash for exactly this reason. How are we going to be able to get back to the Binyan Beit Shlishi? How are we going to be able to finally get to the building of the third Beis HaMikdash? It's through these two things. If we don't hinder our Mesorah, we keep exactly what we were taught from the Torah itself. And then number 2, our unwavering faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's really the secret of how to combat anti-Semitism. These two things, this little parsha that's hidden, it seems like a real estate deal. But really it's the story of Jewish history and also the secret of how to combat anti-Semitism. So the last thing I want to tell you is that there are Jews around the world, they're scared, right? What's going to be? What's going to happen? In the past 2,000 years of Jewish exile, anti-Semitism never destroyed us, right? It wasn't, we're still here. We're in Ranana, we're learning Torah on a Wednesday, it's amazing. It's absolutely incredible. What could Chas v'Shalom destroy us? Losing our faith and losing our emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what could you do at home to battle anti-Semitism? What could each person do? You come back and go, I want to know, what could I do? Strengthen your Mesorah, strengthen your faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whether it's make sure to say Shema with your kids every single night, whether it's saying more Divrei Torah, whether it's learning halacha, whatever it is, strengthen your faith in the Mesorah, and also your emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. B'ezrat Hashem, when we do that, what we're going to be zocha? We'll be zocha to see the building of the third Beis HaMikdash, like Yitzchak said, right? It's called Rehovot. The third Beis HaMikdash is called Rehovot. Ki yerchiv Hashem lanu ufarinu ba'aretz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu expanded the land for us, and we will multiply in the land of Israel. And B'ezrat Hashem, we should be zocheh to see that. B'mera b'yameinu. Amen.